everybody. I'm Logan Crawford, and this is the award-winning TV talk show right here on Ebru Fresh Outlook. A joint session of Congress, a world leader greeted with thunderous applause and, get this, bipartisan support. Surprise, it's not President Barack Obama who was speaking and greeted so warmly. It was the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, after some making nice politically to the U.S. lawmakers, he outlined exactly why he believes a nuclear-armed Iran must be stopped. Take a look.
Beyond the Middle East, Iran attacks America and its allies through its global terror network. It blew up the Jewish Community Center and the Israeli embassy in Buenos Aires. It helped al-Qaeda bomb U.S. embassies in Africa. It even attempted to assassinate the Saudi ambassador right here in Washington, D.C. In the Middle East, Iran now dominates 4 Arab capitals: Baghdad, Damascus, Beirut, and Sana'a. And if you...
We are back live on set here at Fresh Outlook. I am joined by the Ebru think tank, Scott Monje, a Foreign Policy Association expert, Alain Sanders, a political science professor at St. Peter's University, and Dr. Jackie Guzda, media analyst from Western Connecticut State University. And Alain, I'll start with you because you're in the hot seat there right across from me. What did you think of Benjamin Netanyahu's speech to the joint session?
I thought it was a very forceful speech, and I thought he outlined very clearly his position and the views that he believes are important, which is the threat that Iran poses. I think if you take a look at the context and the way the speech came about, there's much to be desired because it elicited all kinds of partisan reactions. And I think it's unfortunate that it did that. I think it's unfortunate that the Prime Minister accepted a partisan invitation, and it's unfortunate that the speech elicited all kinds of partisan responses from the President down to individual Democrats and Republicans in the chamber. Having said that, it was the wrong time and the wrong venue to speak on this issue. One needs to get beyond that, and many of the leaders are incapable of getting beyond that. They're behaving as children, and we need to behave as adults because the Iran situation is very much an adult problem. And so I think
Let me just stop you there. We'll get more on your thoughts in a second and move on to Jackie. Jackie, is the message lost because the way the message was presented? Many people viewed this as a snub to the United States president. What's your view as an expert on communications and delivering messages effectively?
Well, first of all, it was a snub to the President of the United States. He was saying, look, I can come into your house and push you aside, which he did, and he had the support of the Republican Congress behind him. But more than that, the thing about getting your message across and propaganda, because all politicians issue their propaganda, is that it only works if people don't know that you're doing it. So Netanyahu came across, he had this either-or message. Either you stop Iran in their tracks or they're going to get a nuclear weapon tomorrow. Well, he's been saying that for 20 years, more than 20 years. He says that we're going to have a nuclear weapon within days. The other thing is that he offered no other solution to this problem. He said that Iran was the aggressor. Look, the only aggression that we've seen in the Middle East against their neighbor has been Israel with the Palestinian situation. If you look what happened in Gaza this summer, over 2,000 Palestinians were killed. 70% of them were civilians. What's happening is that Netanyahu is very right-wing. He does not speak for all Jews. He does not speak for all Israelis. He comes across, he pushes his message. People know that it's wrong, it's erroneous, not because of what he says, but because of what Israel has done. And so a lot of this now is blowback. Alain just said, look, this is wrong. In the press used to just applaud Israel. They are our closest ally in the Middle East. Well, now it's getting blowback because we see the difference between Netanyahu's words and Israel's actions.
I know Alan's got a lot to say. You've got a bone to pick. Much of what let me just go to Scott first, and then I'm going to come back and have you beat Jackie up.
Sure.
Okay.
Bring it on.
What's your perspective as a foreign policy expert?
Well, in that I would move away from the forcefulness of the message. It was very forceful, but I have a lot of problems with the message itself, apart from the way it was delivered and presented. He takes a position against negotiating with the Iranians because they can't be trusted, but this is what negotiations are about. You don't negotiate and arms control people with people because you trust them. We didn't negotiate SALT and START with the British during the Cold War. We negotiated it with the Russians because we didn't trust them. That's what it's about. It's about arranging a system where you know what they're doing, you know what's going on because you don't trust them. You have verification of the agreements and so on. This is going to be part of this treaty as well, assuming it goes through. His position, and he had nothing to offer. He was opposed to the negotiation, but he had nothing realistic to offer to replace it.
Well, people were not listening. Okay, I hear that all the time. He had nothing to offer. Of course he had something to offer. Gaza is not relevant to this issue. The issue is Iran. So we could talk about Gaza at another time, and I don't think it's relevant to this issue. The issue is Iran. And the issue here is that the fact is that talks have failed. We have had talks with Iran for decades, and step by step by step, the Iranians have gotten more and more sophisticated in their nuclear capacities. They are now a threshold state. So to say that Iran is not moving towards nuclear and whatever, that doesn't make any sense. Step by step, the Iranians have moved forward and become a threshold nuclear state. Now, what did he advocate? He advocated a hardline position in the negotiations. Why? Because many people simply don't trust Obama to be a hardline negotiator. There's plenty of evidence domestically when he has dealt with Republicans that the man doesn't negotiate from a hardline position, that instead he gives in, and very often he negotiates against himself. Moreover, who is negotiating here? The United States, Great Britain, France, and Russia. Would you put much faith in what these people do? The Europeans have not been able to do anything significant with regard to Putin's advance in Crimea. What makes one think that their negotiating posture vis-a-vis Iran will be a solid posture that will in fact freeze the nuclear program of Iran? As best as we know, the agreement is to last something like 10 years. Now, we don't know the details, but do you honestly believe that 10 years is a long enough period of time to develop trust, to develop verification, and to believe that the Iranians will actually live up to their agreement? There's been plenty of evidence over the decades that Iran has not lived up to its agreements and that it's willing to cheat.
I'll hold you there for just a second. Jackie, one of the things that Netanyahu said that struck me was that just last week, the Iranians had blown up in practice an American battleship. I thought that was a very powerful image that he spoke about. And then he said, it was just last week that this happened, as if to wake this sleeping giant of the United States. I know this goes contrary to your initial statement, but what are your thoughts on his statements and what Alan has just said to you there?
There's a whole nest of things in that. But look, here's the thing. We're dividing it up into good and evil. The Iranians are evil. The message is that. Look at what they're doing. Israel is good. What I'm saying is that Gaza is relevant because you look at the actions of the countries. If you look at way back, Israel has gobbled up land from Palestine, not only Palestine, but Lebanon, all around that area.
They have given back everything
Iran,
in Lebanon and in Egypt.
Let me finish because I can qualify what you just said. Okay. The other thing is that if you look at what Iran has done, you get these messages, but we cut ties with Iran in 1979. That's when the Ayatollah came into position. You know who's getting hurt by these sanctions now on Iran? It's not the rich people, it's not the government, it's the normal citizens of Iran. Those are the people that can be behind a government. The government now is sending out these messages that they're going to do harm to the P7+1. I understand that, to Israel. But Israel is no innocent lamb itself when you look at their actions.
Scott.
I wanted to take issue with something that Alan said about how we've been negotiating with the Iranians for decades. We haven't been negotiating with the Iranians for decades. It's fairly recent. We've had sanctions on them for decades, and they've got us to the position where we are now. The Europeans came close to negotiating a deal about a dozen years ago, the last time they had a reformist president, Khatami, and the U.S. pressed the British to cut it down. What they were offering at that time was freezing their centrifuges where they were then. They had 164 centrifuges in I think it was 2002. They've got 19,000 now. 19,000 that they would not have had if we'd agreed to a deal back then. And the other thing I was going to say just escaped my mind. Okay.
I'm going to let Alan chime in anyway
Sure,
because we have you guys on an alliance here, so we'll get Alan's side of it here.
You know,
as
saying
well.
Iran is bad and Israel is good, that's a false dichotomy.
Well, Netanyahu was making
Now, let
it.
me finish. Israel is our ally, and if one wants to look at good and bad, I think the United States has done good and bad around the world. Israel has done good and bad around the world. The question is the threat of a nuclear Iran. And all of this argumentation sort of takes that off the table and tries to make side arguments about it. Do we really want, will the world be safer? Will American power be more secure? Will we, as individual citizens, be more secure when Iran has a nuclear bomb? Understand that the threat of the nuclear option in Iran is not just about Iran having a nuclear bomb, but it's the threat of an arms race then in the Middle East for those who will feel threatened and who will want to pursue nuclear weapons. And it's the threat of giving nuclear technology to terrorists, because we know that Iran has ties with terrorist organizations.
Running out of time, Alan, Jackie.
So
And then Scott wraps it up.
So if the issue is Iran getting a nuclear bomb, wouldn't we and Israel be safer to have it out on the table and go through diplomacy as opposed to just saying, no, you can't do that from the superpowers on the Western side as well as Israel, who has a nuclear
Jackie,
arsenal?
do you really believe that Iran wants to develop its nuclear program because they want nuclear energy?
I don't know, but they have a right to do that for a peaceful means. By looking at
But by that point, it might be too late.
No, but listen, by keeping it more open, by sending in inspectors, at least we
You
can
really believe
see
that regime is
what
going to be
they're
solid
doing.
enough? You really believe that regime is going to be able to inspect thoroughly,
trust-
since Iran has refused on very many
I trust
occasions
that regime
to have inspectors?
as much or as less as I trust Netanyahu.
Okay, we have a disagreement here. Final thought with Scott Monje.
They have inspectors. They come in regularly. The area where they have not allowed them to inspect is a program where they've been accused of doing the detonators for a nuclear weapon a dozen years ago.
And that's
those
a key.
they agree or they disagree on
issue.
whether they were making them, but everybody agrees that it ended a dozen years ago. What was I going to say? Netanyahu presents this notion that this agreement means they will get a bomb. Not having this agreement opens the way for them to get a bomb. And the agreement itself may last 10 years. The
Not unless you take military action
restrictions
against
you
them.
put on them take 10 years, but the verification regime would presumably continue after that. The deal's not done. We don't know what it says. But under the IAEA, and if it includes the additional protocol, which is what we're trying to get, then the verification regime would continue indefinitely after that.
It's putting a lot of faith in a lot of ifs.
There are no ifs on the other side. The other side is just saying we don't want them to have a bomb,
I think the Prime
and
Minister
they're not doing
urged
anything
a
about it.
tougher position in negotiations. That's what he urged. That's what he specifically said to the Congress.
He said that it's a fantasy.
I think
example.
believing
Look at
that
how
10
well he's done
years.
in
If you
negotiating with
wonder
Palestinians.
why this issue is
Likewise.
complicated in Washington, you have to
And
go
we
no
like each
further
other.
than looking at our think tank. They do like each other a
Yes, we
lot,
do.
but you can like each other a lot. Hey, Washington, listen to this. You can like each other a lot and have a difference of opinion. When we come back, a new report is out in black and white, the problems with policing in Ferguson, Missouri. After this.